Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the 2006 WWE produced slasher film, See No Evil, starring one of their wrestlers, Kane. Now this was a film that was viciously attacked by the critics at the time of its launch, but was able to make just enough money at the box office to warrant a direct-to-DVD sequel about 8 years later. So with that all being said, let's get into my thoughts on the film. Let's review See No Evil. So as I said, this was a film produced by WWE. This was their first major film that they ever released, and it was distributed by Lionsgate back in 2006. Now this was a film directed by Gregory Dark, who had been known for making the transition from adult films into more mainstream filmmaking, and it was written by Dan Madigan, someone who had been associated with WWE for a while. Now Glenn Jacobs was the wrestler Kane, and he was sort of the star that this was a vehicle for. He was meant to be sort of the movie monster, someone who's supposed to kind of be the Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees stand-in in this slasher film. The film's story follows a group of juvenile delinquents who are getting the opportunity to exchange 3 days of work cleaning an old hotel to get about a month knocked off their sentences. And this is a group of people that sort of know each other already, and there's a lot of group dynamics already forming between them. And then you have sort of this cop that's the correctional officer that's overseeing this, him and a woman are, and this cop has a history with Kane, with this crazy serial killer because of something we saw in the opening. So in the opening, we saw this cop and his partner go into an abandoned house in which they heard screaming of a woman. They did find the woman with her eyes gouged out, and this big hulking figure attacked and killed one of the cops, and the other one was able to shoot him in the back of the head. So it seems like maybe this is over. We find out that there's a ton of women that were killed by this man, this beast, this thing, and had their eyes taken out. There's some sort of weird religious significance to it all that we don't find out until later. And this cop now, he finds out that, oh yeah, all these teenagers that I'm responsible for watching over are being killed off one by the same hulking, menacing figure that I thought I had killed. They don't really go too far into the backstory as to came back from the dead or if he went missing after the whole incident in the beginning of the movie. He just sort of is back, right? That's the sort of point. And in general, the story isn't really one with any depth or any serious characterization. These are all sort of stereotypical characters meant to just be people that we watch and are annoyed by, and then we, I guess, cheer them on when they die, which is something definitely that slasher movies have done in the past, but it never really works, right? Slasher films are at their best when you do care about the characters, and the killer is a bit menacing and scary. I mean, the sequels we can always enjoy in the films like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, but it also does weaken them as films, and as horror films in particular, when you're cheering for the killer because the characters are so annoying, or because we've just gotten so accustomed to seeing the killer for so long that we just end up sort of naturally siding with them. And I think that is something that it makes almost all these long-running series unsuccessful, but we already have that in the first movie here with this slasher film, which is not a good sign. Just from the beginning, the writing in the film was so poor, the characterization was so shallow, the stereotypes of the characters were so annoying, and I just didn't care about either side. I wasn't really even cheering for the villain because he wasn't even that well developed either. So you just already are at this stage where you're at the worst type of slasher sequel that makes them unsuccessful as horror movies, and you're already starting that out in your first movie. And they do try and have some characterization for Kane's villain. They try to throw in some pseudo-intellectual posturing about, there's religious extremism of his mother that sort of informed his killing spree, and he's being controlled by that, as well as his sort of weird psychological urges that are based on his own repression from his mother. It's all this really pathetic and done before sort of thing as a way that's kind of just thrown on, and it just feels like the most cynical deployment of theme, right? Like using this as like a thematic element, which really it does not deserve because it's so underdeveloped, and it's just a cliche thrown on in a way that's kind of like, oh look, we're not just this nihilistic, sadistic torture reel, against women. This is a film that has depth to it. No, it doesn't have any depth whatsoever. In fact, it's everything that people accuse sort of better torture porn movies of being. It is just this sadistic, nihilistic piece of trash that really just is able to deliver somewhat on the gore a little bit, but no one cares about any of that, and there's not even that cool of kills, to be honest with you. So what you get is just some cool effects work, I guess, that really has no intentionality behind it, no meaning, no depth, nothing whatsoever that makes it an interesting movie, nothing that can make it elevated beyond its sort of just visceral subject matter. And even on just a pure base level of a visceral horror movie, it doesn't really work at all anyways. But the fact that there is just no meaning at all to it, there is no intentionality, it's completely just a vehicle to torture these young, attractive people in a way that the audience can be like, yes, let's kill them. And it's just like, no, this is just completely stupid and pointless. And it makes the accusation against films that are like considered torture porn, this one fits the bill completely, whereas you have films like Saw and Martyrs that are accused of being these meaningless, sadistic affairs, but really have a lot of intentionality behind them from the writers and the directors and all the filmmakers involved that really do put their heart and soul into the movie and really provide a lot of meaning and depth to the suffering and viscerality that's on display. This film has none of that. There is no intentionality. It's all just the worst of the worst and the most stupid kind of filmmaking possible. And not only does it not work as sort of this extreme horror movie of the early 2000s, but just even on just a basic level, it doesn't work at all, and it falls into all the cliches and stereotypes that I hate about horror movies. This is just a completely just terrible movie. I think that at its core is what I do not like about this movie is its lack of intentionality, its lack of appreciation for the horror genre in general, and its lack of respect for its audience. And it's just the worst style of populist filmmaking you can approach it with. And I think, I mean, I'm not really a big fan or knowledgeable necessarily about WWE, and so I'm not really going to get into if this is just like something that you would expect from a WWE produced film, because I know that they can make entertaining stuff, and I know a lot of people are fans of them. But I think they just thought it was going to be easy to make a horror movie and to sort of, I guess it showed what Vince McMahon thinks of his audience. He thinks of them as just dumb simpletons. And I think that that's present throughout this movie, and I think they got a director who really had no talent or skill or ability to craft anything that had any depth to it, and the writing was about as basic as you could expect. So yeah, I don't think that this is a movie that's really worthy of getting a sequel. I barely even made that much money to begin with, but maybe it made more, not just on its box office run, but also on DVD back in the day, which makes sense, maybe just enough to warrant a direct-to-DVD sequel, which I haven't seen, and I have no real interest in seeing the sequel, which I've heard is even worse somehow. And this is a movie that looks just grotesque and dull and has a really bland color palette to it, which I understand that that was sort of the style at the time, but I think a lot of other films are able to take that sort of drab aesthetic and push it in really interesting directions. And I think the editing style is also very emblematic of that time, the sort of MTV quick cutting and flash photography like that you saw in something like Saw. But here it's really horribly edited, and I just am not a big fan of that editing style in general for the most part, even though there's some nostalgia associated with it. And in here we see once again there's just no intentionality behind it. It's just about being aesthetically cool or whatever, but it's just stupid. I think that sort of sums up most of my thoughts. It's something that is trying to be aesthetically cool. It's trying to sort of appeal to the audience, but it thinks of the audience as complete idiots, and it thinks it doesn't necessarily. It's a horror film, so it doesn't warrant any sort of serious, in-depth writing or any actual interesting filmmaking going on. We'll just latch on to all the trends and try and make it a cool, hip horror movie as a vehicle for Kane. It's just all completely stupid. He does okay as sort of a villain, but not even, he doesn't even really bring that much menace or imposing sort of stature. All he has is his stature, that's it. But he doesn't really do much with it that you see in other really talented horror actors that, Kane Hodder and other people like that. None of that's going on. None of that sort of intelligence within the acting is on display. And all the acting in general is just terrible in this movie. It's just a terrible film all around. There isn't really any redeeming qualities. I would not recommend, even for the most die-hard horror fans. It's just, this is not a slasher film worth checking out. It shows you everything that was wrong with 2000s horror, even though there was a lot that was right with 2000s horror. This shows the downsides and all the negative aspects, all thrown together into one just disgusting mixture that is not one that a horror fan, I think, could really truly appreciate, except maybe as a guilty pleasure for some people, but not for me. So that's all for today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications every time I drop a new video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.